for, so I mean, it goes, I mean, you think about it, it takes a long time to get all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, but when it goes, it goes. And they can't have anything holding up a box on the assembly line because it's holding up everything that's upstream. So the thing just goes. And when it gets done, it goes out and it comes to you. And so that's, you know, I think you'll probably hear me or Geo repeat that sequence a few times as the course goes, because that's really what you're trying to slot into, is that process, figuring out that process. And, you know, the permitting part, the regulatory part, kind of depends on which state you're in. I don't know. I've never built in Oregon, but I've looked into recently into building in Colorado, and it's, compared to Connecticut, it's more relaxed. Not in Denver, but, you know, in Crested Butte. So, you know, it all depends on the location.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're working with a modular company and you get this set of stamped plans by this independent engineer, then you bring those plans to your local permit office? No,
they have to do it. They have to see, remember, the factory is selling a product that they want to ship across. You know, it's like they're selling a heating system or a roof system or a you know, an inflatable. It's a big, complicated product that they want to sell in a neighboring state. So before they can do that, the law says you've got to get this special stamp that says it's utterly a safe product. Otherwise, you can't ship it. So they do that.
So you don't have to worry about local city stuff, like maybe Austin's different than Houston. I don't know. But,
no, absolutely, because you're in Austin, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fun and educational for you to go down to the building department and say, you know, I'm building my first prefab. I don't know when, but I'm in the process of learning about what's all's required. Can you give me all the forms and tell me anything that I might not know? Believe me.
Yeah, no, I'm doing a remodel. No, I don't need more of that.
Well, you'll meet some very interesting people.
Yeah.
Fascinating people.
That's all taken care of. That's great. That part's in here. So Connecticut's different. They also need an architect stamp on top of all that other stuff.
In densely settled areas, they usually want either an architect stamp or an engineer's stamp. And some factories will provide the latter, the engineer's stamp.
Right.
It's different from that three-party engineer. The engineer's stamp, so if you go to New Haven, Connecticut and say, I want to build a house, what do I need? They're going to say, well, you're going to need stamped drawings. And when you say, never mind prefab, this is just any house, any building.
Okay.
And so either an architect or an engineer is going to have to stamp the drawings as being structurally sound. That's mostly just structure, fire, and safety.
Right.
So that's a stamped set of drawings. What the factory has to do is, in order to sell their product, they have to get it reviewed by a similar but much more rigorous set of engineering reviewers. And that satisfies the need to sell their product across state lines. And your local building inspector will want to see that stamp, but that stamp's not the same as the stamp you need to just get a building permit in that municipality. That's like the way these things work. You won't be surprised to learn, in part has to do with the flow of money. So, you know, the municipality is all very pleased that you have these stamped drawings from the factory, but they want a fee for their building permit, and for that they want to be able to say, oh, you know, we're going to review your stamped drawings and stuff. So it's two permits, two stamps.
So local, so you do bring these drawings to the permit office, or they mail them or something, right?
They do what?
So if you work with a modular company,
yeah,
these stamped drawings, either you or the modular company sends them to the local Austin permit office or wherever you are, in order to get your actual permit.
Right.
Okay. Which may take longer than the 7 to 10 days on the production lines, as I could tell.
Yeah. Well, they do that They do that before they build it.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Oh, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's a good little test, by the way, when you're talking to your different factories. Ask that question. Say, hey, so can you help me get my building permit? And if so, how do you do it? Some companies will do a lot. I mean, I used to run a design department in a company up in Middlebury, Vermont, and we went all the way through getting people's permits for them.
Yeah.
But then other companies will say, no, that's you. You got to do that.
Okay.
It's everything in between. So
Okay.
it's a good question.
Okay.
There will probably be this for all of you if you're thinking this is feeling very confusing at this point. Just keep asking the same question over and over again. The reason it seems confusing is because there is not one answer. There's an answer for Austin. There's an answer for Connecticut. There's an answer for Colorado and Florida and Toronto and they all have things in common, but they are all going to be slightly different. And that's why I keep making these suggestions that you all laugh at, like, why don't you go introduce yourself to the building department? But that's really how you get the information.
Yeah.
And they tend to be nice people. You all will look like babes in the woods. I mean, none of you are going to look like, oh, I've been doing this my whole life. So they're not going to take advantage of you. They're going to say, oh, this person is clearly, in here for the first time. And they're nice people, generally. So.
Yeah, that has been my experience. I have been down to the Austin permit office the last few months because we're doing a bathroom remodel. And they are very nice. All the inspectors down there, all the people I talk to, but what a bureaucratic nightmare. I still have a permit yet. Getting closer.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, the people that you want to come and do framing and plumbing, they just assume you skip the permit altogether.
Right.
Which,
well, in a large city, and Gio's worked in Toronto for, on and off for his whole life, and large cities sometimes have legal and sometimes have paralegal expediters that basically are paid professionals to get your building. I mean, New York City, you can't possibly get a building permit without an expediter. I mean, It's not done. And so that's an additional cost. And usually the building department doesn't want to tell you, why don't you go hire William over there? He'll get this done for you. Yeah. But if you find that you keep going to your building department and feel like you're not getting anywhere, you could ask, hey, is there a professional person that can help make this process go? And then that tends to be only in the bigger cities.
Yeah. Well, we're getting bigger.
Question back about cost. You said East Coast is expensive. So is it possible to look at vendors in other areas, Midwest, West, or wherever, where it's cheaper if you're going with prefab anyway? Obviously, yeah, there'll be a higher delivery cost, but other than that, is it possible to lower costs by going outside the region?
Depends on how far you go.
I only ask because, I mean, because I keep hearing East Coast is expensive, and from my experience, it is super expensive. But I also, came across some firms in California who do prefab housing, turnkey, which look pretty good. And, so I was thinking of whether it's worth even talking to them.
Well, not from California, no.
You want them to deliver it to the East Coast?
Yeah.
No, that's crazy. I mean, the transportation costs alone will probably be as much as more than the mods. It doesn't make any sense. No. Stick to your region.
Okay.
Except the one possible exception is there are a few companies that have factories all over the country. So like Champion, I think Toll Brothers now. There are these huge, publicly traded companies that do have factories, and they'll just slot you into their East Coast or their Midwestern or their whatever. But by and large, the markets are very efficient. For you, Andalib, I would say if you're looking for economy, then you in your market, you would go to Pennsylvania. There's a lot of, in the sort of College Park, Lewisburg area of PA, there are dozens of factories, all within probably 45-minute drive of each other. It's a place that really built up around these factories back after the Second World War, and they're all mostly still there. And because they're close, they're very competitive. They compete with each other. And so you have to be careful because they cut a lot of corners. There's some snide remarks that get made about the Pennsylvania factories fairly regularly. But I've shopped them, and there's some good factories out there. I mean, you could look at there's a company called Ritz-Craft out there, which sounds terrible, but it's actually a pretty good factory. That would be, in fact, that would be a good factory for you to start with. They're vertically integrated, so that means that they have their own trucks, they have their own set crews, they have their own assembly line for their mods, but they also have their own cabinet shop, and they do all their own kitchens and bathrooms. It's a pretty
Ritz-Craft.
Ritz, like the cracker, RITZ Craft.
Ritz-Craft. Okay, thanks.
House is made out of crackers.
Yeah.
Right, a lot, very, very oily. Okay. So where does that leave us? Are we on Q&A now?
We're on Q&A, yeah.
I have questions about the videos that I looked at quite a few weeks back, the ones that you last sent before the break.
Okay.
And so actually I wrote out some questions because I knew I would remember weeks later. So they were about SIPs in general, different panels, systems. But before I get to that, when we were looking at Grace's model, and you asked about the mechanical room, I had two questions. So what size should I leave for mechanical room in my house? And the space between the second and first floor, I've been putting it like at a foot, or is that right? I mean, like, the space to run stuff between the first and the second floor. How much space do you leave for that?
I would add 20 inches.
20 inches. Okay.
Well, from the ceiling of the first floor to the floor of the second floor is 20 inches, or it could be less. It could be 18 inches.
Okay.
But, it probably will be 20 inches.
Okay. And they did mention in one of the videos, they didn't advise using SIPs between floors because it has an echoey, annoying noise. So what do you advise for sound deadening between floors?
No, not SIPs.
No, that's why I'm asking.
No, it sounds like somebody's selling SIPs.
Oh, they advise not using SIPs.
Yeah. One of the great things about modular construction is the sound deadening between the upstairs and the downstairs, because you have your floor assembly, your traditional floor assembly of 2x10s. Then you have like 3 inches or 4.5 inches of space, and then you have your 2x6 ceiling joist. So that's even before you put any insulation in there, that's an incredible sound barrier. If you put fiberglass bats in there, now you've got a sound transmission coefficient of it's almost like a concrete wall. It's very quiet.
Okay.
I wouldn't think you would need to do much more than that. We never have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really
And
big.
then if sound is I'm sorry?
So two big spaces that are separated and then fiberglass bats or some kind of.
Fiberglass, well, they'll put fiberglass bats in both of those assemblies if you ask them. So they'll put some in the ceiling, and they'll put some in the, but to some degree that depends on how your utilities are running.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But that's the last sound transmission place you have to worry about. What I would urge you to do if sound is an issue is to make sure that all the bedroom walls have insulation in them.
Okay.
And the bathroom walls. And if you do that, and it can just be fiberglass or mineral wool, and that'll do it.
Okay.
Unless you have like wild teenagers.
And the mechanical room size, I mean, I realize I need to put a space for that in my house, and I don't know what size
Minimum
look at.
6 by 6.
You know, of course, it depends. I would say nothing less than 8 by 10, and 8 by 12 would be better.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
You
for
know
that.
what it is it's not that you're going to pack it full of equipment. It's that all this stuff has setbacks. So when you put your furnace or your air conditioning or your heat pump in there, it has setbacks not just for safety and heat loss, but they have to get it in and service stuff. So they usually want 3 feet on all sides, or 30 inches or 24 inches. You can pack a mechanical, I mean, the people in the trades who do the HVAC and the MEP, they are wizards at cramming stuff into undersized mechanical, but it's not a good strategy.
Right. Okay.
You'll be glad you did it. In the end, if you put too much space aside for your mechanicals, that space instantly becomes storage.
Yeah.
That's where the golf clubs go, and the sled and all that other stuff.
Yeah. And there's no problem with putting it on the lower floor as opposed to the main floor.
No,
Right.
that's a good place for it.
Good. Okay.
As an aside, Carol, since you're in Texas,
Uh-huh.
are you thinking of using a heat pump system?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of using. It's a heat.
Yeah, so really all you need, you're going to have a place, you're going to have the actual heat pump is going to be outside someplace. That's not too big, and you'll be able to site that. It's like a big suitcase. Then the lines for a heat pump are these little line sets. They're very small compared to ducts, and they go to your different cassettes or air handlers in and about your house. So really, your biggest challenge will be running the condensate lines at every place where you have an air handler that's turning the compressed refrigerant into cool air. You're going to have a little condensate line that has to follow and find its way. It's no big deal, but that's your biggest problem. So as far as the mechanical room, you just need space for a ample domestic hot water tank. You want a good wall, solid wall, probably 8 feet in length, to put your panel box on, and your any kind of cable box or internet box, or if you have alarm system, that's got to have a box. It's good to have maybe 6 feet of wall, and if your hot water heater, and you're pretty much done.
Yeah.
If you have a central vac, it's going to be in the garage.
Okay. Because it's noisy, yeah. So speaking of hot water heater, which is what we've always had, I haven't decided. I don't know enough about the hot water on demand. What they call that? To know it's more energy efficient, or it's just a pain in the neck. I don't know.
Anybody have opinions out there? Has anybody lived with instantaneous tankless hot water heater?
Yeah, our apartment in London was converted to a tankless, and it works fine.
There was enough pressure. I mean, I know the hot water doesn't want out, but there's enough pressure with it to make it. It was normal. Just felt normal.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've heard some people complain, but maybe they did it wrong.
Some people do complain because now in Europe, they know how to do these really well. They
Okay.
do. The reason, do you use a tub?
Rarely. Mostly shower.
Yeah, because the tubs, most of these have trouble keeping up with the tub. Here's one now. This is this is a product I'm looking at now for a project.
Yeah.
State water heaters. This plumber told me something which I've never run into before. They, in order to keep the venting down, they'll take 2 or 3 of them and line them up to get the volume so that which is impressive. And they do whole hotels, just line up like 6 or 8 of these things. So, that's not something you're going to do, but I think I would go with Andalib. I think if you have the things installed by somebody who's put them in, no plumber wants to put in something they're going to have callbacks and complaints about. So if they put in, dozens or hundreds of them, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
If you've got somebody who's just putting in their first one, you should get an engineer to size it properly. Don't let the plumber size it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know that's really getting ahead of myself, but.
No, it isn't. Why? No, everybody should be thinking of their mechanicals at this point.
Yeah. Well, it sounds great. And it seems like we use up less energy because you only heat up water right when you need it.
Right.
But yeah.
And if you size them right, they heat the water when you need it, and they keep providing it as long as you want to take that shower.
Yeah. I guess part of the problem is we have gas, so our gas bill is so low. So it's kind of like heating the water now is not that expensive at all because.
Right. That's Texas.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Okay, so as far as these the videos, so they started out talking about the different panelized systems, and then 2 weeks ago, last week when Paul was talking about his panelized system, let's say this company anyway.
Board panel.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so it looked really great. I was really impressed. But are there panelized systems where the windows and doors are already in? Because to me, that's another system where they're already doing the ceiling in the factory. I'm not relying on some local crew to do that right. So are there panelized systems that already have windows and doors in them?
Sure.
Yes.
I don't know which ones exist in the Texas area. The most advanced panel that comes with windows and doors and insulation and wiring is probably the Benson wood panel. So if you look up Benson wood,
yeah, they had an article. You had a video, or they had an article video on that too. They had this open building system, which sounded really cool. I have no idea if they transport down this way or not.
They would.
Yeah. All right. So how expensive are they? That's one of my questions. How expensive are these cool open building panels? Do you know? I mean,
they tend to be pricey. They're the better quality. You mean actual square foot cost? They really want to make their product affordable because they have a bad reputation for being the most expensive on the block. So Ted Benson, the guy who started the company, has really made repeated efforts to try to figure out ways to deliver a more affordable product without compromising his quality, because that's what he's really known for, is his quality.
Right.
So what's the value today? I'm not sure, but I will tell you this: if you tell him that you went to the Yestermorrow Prefab class and as a result you'd like to talk to him about fabricating your design, he or his crew will definitely give you audience.
All right.
And if they don't give you audience, then you guys tell us, and Gio and I will go break some heads.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, and then another of the articles mentioned something called core slab. Core slab. Does that ring a bell? So it spans up to 50 feet. It's made of it looks like it's made of some kind of concrete. But really long spans. It looked like it really worked for my garage floor. And it says you can skip ceiling drywall. You can just put texture type paint directly on it. And you can also run electrical, plumbing, air vents through it. So that sounded really good. So one of my questions is, so if you use it as a floor, does it have little divots in it, or is it flat? I mean, the
Gio, have you used it?
coarse slab?
Yeah, I have. On Brian's house.
Right.
Okay.
So can you talk to Carol's
the
quick?
slabs? Yeah, the slabs. The slabs are like you got imagine an ice cream sandwich, and you've got holes that run through the white part in the ice cream sandwich, the long way.
Okay. Okay.
Through those holes, you could actually use those holes as a conduit to run your wires for electrical, to run your pipes for plumbing, and you could use those holes as ducting for HVAC. Okay.
Great. But they sound very expensive, so you wouldn't just want to put it in. I assume it's expensive.
It's a little more expensive than, let's say using definitely more expensive than Powell system, and about 12 years ago it was just starting to come on the market for residential. Now it's still more for custom homes. But there is a company out of Ottawa, Ontario that has been making concrete units for government housing for military, and they've actually turned it now into housing for residents and are just getting into it. But they've been doing this for over 25 years on an institutional basis. So I haven't run into anything like that in the States, but I mean, if you're interested, we can easily find something.
Okay.
Or try and find something.
Yeah.
Can't guarantee you'll find it, but I mean, we can try and find something. Yeah. I mean, Core Slab, the company Core Slab is an American company. Let me get this right. It's actually by Italians that came to America, but anyway, that's another story. But it's they have many plants in the States, and in fact, I think they have one near Austin. I think
it says it's available in 12 states, and Texas is one of them. The main office is in Ontario.
There you go.
See, there you go. Italian Canadians, damn Italians everywhere.
It seemed like since my house is on this slope, most of it's actually going to be on some foundation, not touching the ground. So I envisioned, I mean, the garage has to hold these heavy cars. It just seemed like a good thing to put as the garage floor, but that might be overkill. I don't know.
I mean, if you're thinking of using it as a deck,
it has really wide spans. It says up to 50.
Right. I mean, if you're thinking, but I mean, you're not really.
I wasn't thinking of walls. I guess I was thinking of as a slab. So
I'm just thinking as a
Oh yeah, it'd be a slab.
Yeah.
I guess it's the name. Of course I know. Okay. So let's see what else I got. Oh, so all the SIPs articles, come as 8 feet, but most people's houses now are going like for 9 feet. Do they make 9 feet SIPs, or they just?
Yeah, they make them up to 12 and 14.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just a little old. Okay. Oh, here's another question. So the exterior layer of SIPs is often OSB, but it said they can also use fiber cement as the exterior layer on the SIPs. So if you do that, can that be the finished exterior, or is that just a really thin thing?
No, it could be the finished exterior. Well, you'd have to attend to the joints, but it's no, it's still going to be probably a ½ inch thick.
So does that look like stucco? I mean, how does it look?
No, you know what hardy panel looks like?
I know what hardy planks look like.
Yeah, so it looks sort of like that.
Okay.
No pattern.
No pattern. Okay. Okay. Well, stucco has no, well, I guess it has some texture to it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if that was a way to save money or not.
You could use that and then stucco it. It would be an appropriate base for a scratch coat of stucco, which is an appropriate finish for Austin for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the fiber cement is waterproof or not? Do you have to seal fiber cement, or is it?
Well, you'd have to seal all the joints at a minimum.
Yeah.
And I would, unless they say otherwise, it's not universally one or the other. It depends on the mix of cement that they use to make the fiberboard. So it'll say in the product specs if it's waterproof or not.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't realize it was variable. Okay. Okay. That might. Oh, so the core slab. So the core slab. Well, it would not be continuous. We'd have little lines in it. You couldn't like stain it to make it a finished concrete floor, right?
No, you would not. No.
Okay. Okay. And how is it with water exposure? Do you know the core slab? Since
Water
I'm-
exposure in what sense?
Rising water, I guess. Standing water.
When you spill a huge jug of iced tea,
Yeah. You know.
Nothing's gonna happen to it. Nothing's gonna happen to it. It's concrete.
Okay. So it's
It'll probably suck it up. But I mean, what ends up happening is the core slab itself. You can the top part. You wouldn't use it as your finished floor. You would add a floor to the top. You could top it off with a concrete topping, and then polish that if you wanted a polished concrete finish. Okay.
that'd be nice.
The underside. Sorry.
I think that would be nice.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I mean, the underside, you can actually leave it. You could leave it the way it is, or you can actually paint it and apply texture to it.
And does it just have long lines? I mean, every 4 feet. Or can you?
Every 4 feet, because where they come together, you're gonna see grooves.
Okay. Okay.
You know, if you want to see what that looks like, go into a Hotel 6 or a Holiday Inn and just look at the ceiling, because that's what they all are.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so in the garage, though, you wouldn't have to finish it, right?
No, you don't have to finish it.
Okay, you could leave it. I mean, it's okay exposed to the elements, so to speak.
It looks cool. I mean, if you're somebody who likes looking at the parts that make a building, it looks great. If you're more going towards that finished interior design look, then it's either unacceptable or extremely edgy.
Yeah.
Hip.
Or like for the lower floor, I don't really care so much. I guess how the ceiling looks.
It would be fine. I think I'm only half kidding when I say go into a Hotel 6, because you'll look up and you'll say, oh, wow, those are the cracks. And you know what? They don't look that bad. You know, they put a bead of caulk in there, paint the whole thing. Nobody, you don't look at it actually gives a nice little detail to the ceiling.
Sounds way better than a popcorn ceiling.
Way better. Although you can see that too at the Hotel 6.
Okay, that was all my.
Wow, those are good questions.
Okay.
One of the owners of Core Slab.
Again?
One of the owners of Core Slab actually built his house out of that material, and the ceiling it looks exactly like John is describing in a hotel. I mean, yeah. I mean, and the guy's Italian, so that tells you something. Maybe it doesn't.
So
I guess you have to drill some kind of holes for the light fixtures and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can use core slab for every floor, but not wall. Just you can, but you.
Well, there are companies, and I think Core Slab is doing this now more on a custom basis, that actually can provide you with a concrete precast wall that has an insulation in it.
But otherwise, typically you would use it for the floor, foundation, floor, and in between floors, between the first and the second floor as well.
Yeah,
Or would you not recommend that?
You know, you could do that. I mean, you just have to see. Yeah, you could do that. But
It would be a great product to use in combination with superior walls. If you wanted a fireproof building, you could use superior walls below grade and above, and you could do these long free spans from exterior wall to exterior wall with core slab, and run all your utilities in the slab, punching through for your lights and for your HVAC, and it'd be a very simple, fireproof, incredibly strong building that could have some amazing thermal properties if you insulated it properly.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So following on from that, and linked to what Carol was asking earlier about the thickness between the floor and the ceiling, ceiling from one to a floor to the next floor. Does that cover, I mean, and where does the ducting typically run between floors, and if you have a traditional HVAC system? And secondly, do you have, what are your views on a traditional HVAC versus a ductless air conditioning system, individual units per floor, which is more energy efficient and more flexible from a build perspective, and less maintenance and all that stuff? Again, 7 questions. And ask one question.
So I'm not sure I understood the first 4 questions.
So the first question is, when Carol was asking how much, you said there's typically 20 inches between.
Right.
Does the ducting typically run between that space?
Yes, that's for mods now, not core slab. That's for mods. When you have one box sitting on top of another box, the ceiling assembly on the lower box usually is made of 2x6s or at the most 2x8s. Then the rim of that box goes up another 2, 3, or 4.5 inches, depending on how it's detailed. And then the upper box sits on top of that, and that's the floor assembly of that is 2x10s. So if you count it all up, the 2x10s are 9.5, the 2x6s are 5.5. So now you're at 15 inches. And then you can have something like, let's say 3 2x stacked on the flat, that's 4.5. And then you've got your actual flooring. So it ends up being about 20 inches with a 4.5 inch void between those 2 assemblies. That void's great because it means you can run bathroom vents and heating and cooling vents, and you can run them very directly from A to B. And then when they cross, they can sort of go up and over each other into the joist space of the box above. But does that make sense?
Yeah. Sure. So, and then back to the, I'm sort of favoring the idea of, I like the superior walls. So it's great to hear that superior walls is compatible with this core slab structure. How would the mechanicals run if you use core slab? Where would the ducting work if you use traditional HVAC? And or what would be the optimal way of providing heating and cooling in that kind of structure? Would you recommend ductless mechanicals instead?
Gio, how did you guys do it when you used it? Did they use the cores at all as ducts?
One section of the house has the cores used as ducts,
you gotta speak up.
I did not speaking out loud. One portion of the house had the cores used as ducts, and it worked out quite well. We didn't have to run any duct work. Other than drilling a hole into the slab underneath, and having a pipe going from the boiler to from the boiler to the underside of the slab. So it works. I mean, you're gonna have to have something running. You're gonna have to have a connection from your furnace to the slab cores.
What about, was there any issue with dust?
Initially, well, we cleaned out the cores we used before we had we had the initial startup, and so we brought in a one of the companies that does the duct cleaning, and they basically cleaned out those cores and as well as the ducts that were installed, and it was fine. I mean, it worked perfectly.
Great.
And from a environmental standpoint, what's the cleanest, most energy efficient way of heating and cooling a house? I mean, back to the question about ductless air conditioning. What are your thoughts on that? If I'm going for a net zero house as well, particularly, which I need to think about efficiency.
I'm increasingly, I have to say, I'm a bigger and bigger fan of the heat pump. The heat pump is essentially ductless because you're running these line sets that carry refrigerant, compressed refrigerant, to and from points of in different rooms where it's either compressed or decompressed, depending on whether you're cooling or heating. These line sets are like 3/8 of an inch instead of a big fat duct, so they're very they don't put any voids in the walls or anything. They're very efficient, extremely efficient. The downside is that they're electric, but still they're the most efficient use of electric. And there is no other system where you put in one delivery configuration and it delivers heat and cooling on one fuel.
Really? So I need to learn more about the heat pump system. So that provides cooling as well?
Heat pump is yes, air conditioning. It's basically, it'll cool and heat. And the better ones, and they're getting better faster than any other sector of the HVAC, the better ones in bigger buildings and multi-unit buildings where you can have people calling for cooling on one side of the building and people calling for heating on the other side. The computers in these systems will say, why generate more heat and cooling? Let's just take the heat from this side and pump it over to here. And it's astounding. It's really remarkable. And I think we're only at the beginning of those. I think that they're up to 40% more efficient than they were 10 years ago. I think in the next 5 years, you're going to find these are the absolute state of the art. Everybody's going to be using them. The biggest disincentive right now is in some parts of the country, getting parts is not as easy as other parts. But the three companies that make them are Mitsubishi, Fujitsu, and Daikon, D-A-I, was it D-A-I-K-O-N or E-N? And of those, Daikon's been making them the longest and is the company in this country that has the most parts and distribution. So, but they're price them.
Do they require ducting as well, or how do they? It's a centralized system, right?
That's one of its virtues is it's flexible. So you've all seen those little things, they're bladders. They almost look like they're these not always attractive protuberances that are up on the wall above the windows or the door and stuff. That's completely, the refrigerant line goes from the heat pump on the outside of the building to that, and that's it. There's no ducts. That's the simplest of the systems. Then there's a system where, it doesn't have to be an unattractive appliance mounted on the wall. It can be, they have, they're called cassettes, and they have cassettes that go in flush to the wall. They go flush to the ceiling. They have them flush to the underside of it. So they have a lot of different kinds of cassettes.
Okay.
But they also have cassettes that the refrigerant line goes to the cassette. The cassette generates cool or warm air, but it also, then they run small ducts, little 3 or 4 inch ducts off that cassette to neighboring rooms. So it's very flexible. Sometimes you don't want to put a whole nother cassette, because that's a costly piece of the system, in the say the entry hall. But you don't want the entry hall to get too hot or too cold. So you'll just take a little duct off the kitchen cassette, and you just run it over there, and it keeps the hall. So it's a very flexible system.
That's what they use in Asia. I mean, that's exactly what I was referring to as ductless air conditioning. These individual units.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But what's great is they don't have to be ductless. They can be ductless, or they can be a unit with a side duct that just does that little thing, and it's great. Yeah, no, if your budget can support them, although they used to be the more expensive option. We just did this building that I was telling you came in too expensive. We just priced it using conventional aqua hydrotherm type of heating versus heat pump, and the heat pump completely won the low price with the high quality. So I think in the next few years we're going to just see these things take over within certain size buildings. So that would be my vote. Gio, what do you have a favorite?
Yeah, Mitsubishi. I've used them before. Initially, on the first one I used, I was kind of green behind the ears. Story of my life. But
that
anyway,
sounds great. Green behind the ears.
Yeah, I know. And you got to really be careful, because you want to get the one, and they're getting better. You want to get the one that if it goes down to like minus 29 Celsius, it'll still give you heat, especially if you're in our area of the country where you get cold, really cold. So, yeah, no, they work. They work quite well.
Can you use them in conjunction with air exchangers to keep the air quality fresh?
Yeah, I would definitely, yes.
It's a separate system.
It's a separate system altogether. Okay.
Right.
Can you put air exchangers in any house? I mean, regardless of what heating, cooling system you have.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And you should.
They even make, I don't have any experience with them, but they make these little ones that you just put them in each room on the exterior wall, and they're constantly breathing that. I mean, I don't know if that, of course, the hype is that they work better than the big centralized system, but I don't know.
Right. Okay, great, thanks.
Good questions. Those are all good questions.
So again, so I mean, I guess just tying that up, you by vouching for it, you'd prefer them to any combination of kind of geothermal plus other things and whatnot.
I don't know. I like geothermal too.
What'd you say?
Do you prefer them over geothermal? A combination?
No, I thought Gio had a thought.
I said that I'm actually partial to geothermal. I think it's pretty cool. More traditional way. I guess I'm getting this from our friend. Oh geez, I forget his name now. Jeez. But anyway, I think if you're not drilling hoses as they traditionally do, you actually drill a well. I think geothermal can work really well.
Yeah, I would.
That makes sense?
Yeah, but it's costly. Then you need to add air conditioning as well, whereas these heat pumps provide both. So if you have heat pumps and solar.
No.
I mean, they make heat. The geothermal is essentially a heat pump.
Give you air conditioning.
Okay.
The geothermal system is a heat pump, but instead of taking the heat to and from the air, it takes it to and from the fluids in the earth. Yeah.
Okay.
They're more expensive. Is the problem. But in the right parts of the country, they work pretty well.
in the East Coast, in Vermont, Connecticut, if you have insulated walls, like from Superior Walls, and double, triple glazed windows, will it be insulated enough to enable use of those heat pumps? Will solar panels provide enough and generate enough electricity to run the heat pumps all season? Oh, you just still need to rely on the grid.
You still need to rely on the grid. I mean, you need to rely on the grid because let's say you had a net zero, a really fabulous envelope with triple glazing, and it was a passive house, and you had a heat pump HVAC system. You could certainly put up enough panels so that they would power the system some of the time, but when there's no sun, then you're going to rely on the grid. So what you do is you size your panels so that you're always generating enough electricity so you have a credit with the grid, and that becomes your net zero. Yeah, that's doable. That's increasingly doable because photovoltaic arrays are getting cheaper and more efficient, and so are the heat pumps. So those two curves are coming together. It's great. It's exactly right. And the electrical utilities are losing in their battle to make solar electricity a loser. So it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
After I watched the videos, my question was, why isn't everybody building with these? But the cost definitely explains that. But they seem very cool, and I like to see when they were cutting them on site and building the window. I thought that was, I don't know, cool to see how it's really just kind of like Legos. But I enjoyed watching the videos and everything. That was cool. But no specific questions.
Very good. You know, it's an interesting observation, Grace, that, oh, well, I guess people aren't building with them because they're so expensive. The thing that's interesting about a lot of these innovative systems is that they're expensive because they are small runs. Not a lot of people are using them. The reason not a lot of people are using them is because construction by its very nature is cautious. Builders don't run out and want to become the first adopters because it costs so much, and they take the burn if some new product, and it's a big risk because things could go terribly wrong. And the reason I bring it up is because it's one thing to have people be cautious about a new insulation or a new roofing product, but what we're talking about in this course is not a brand new, but it is a fairly innovative way of delivering the whole building. And although all the parts and all the actual assembly processes are very traditional by and large, the fact that we're doing them in the factory in 7 days after a lot of planning, that's new and newish. And so one of the things this course is trying to do is help you talk to builders and give them a sense of comfort, or find builders that have a sense of comfort with this new way of building. It's just like core slabs or Superior Walls or anything else. Builders, if they haven't done it, they're nervous about it.
Yeah, I think it's also habit and familiarity. Like, like you said, in Europe, they're used to small spaces. You can't accommodate big water heaters in tiny apartments. So it's out of necessity they use them, and they've developed good technology to be able to do it efficiently. And again, in Asia, there is no such thing as ducting there. Every building, residential or commercial, have these heat pumps, or what we call these air conditioners, individual air conditioning units. Right. And it works perfectly fine. So that is the norm there.
It's true. Yeah, it's what we're used to.
Yeah.
So it's you're all on the vanguard.
Yeah, but I mean, the reality is that, you know, it has to be available in an economical fashion here as well. So you have to think about the suppliers and maintenance, and can your regular plumber service those heat pumps in the same way as, you know?
The service is a really big thing. I think as you all get closer to actually, whether it's, you know, this year or in 10 years, as you get closer to actually pulling the trigger on a real building and making the decisions you're going to have to make about the heating system and the windows and the roofing and the lighting and the electrical and the dishwasher, all those different things. You know, there's a tendency, because we're a nation of shoppers, to try to be an intelligent shopper and to go find, you know, buy the right product and look at the description. But with buildings, you almost want to start with the people who are going to service it and install it. Because if you buy the best product, but the closest person to service it is 3 states over, it's not the best product, because when it breaks, it's just, so you go to the person who you know is going to be in your neighborhood forever, and you say, hey, what do you think's the best product? And, you know, what did you put in your house? May not be the state of the art, but it's something, you know, you'll always have parts for, and you'll have a guy who can come and fix it. So it's a different way of thinking. And it's this, I think one of the things we're trying to do in this course is give you that kind of a head with regard to shopping for the whole house and a factory or a manufacturer to produce it. Are they going to be there? Are they going to be behind their product? Are they going to come out and fix stuff or replace stuff for you? Or, you know, that's all part of what you're buying.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that, especially around, you know, these like superior walls, for instance. I mean, if something happens, you have to go to them. And I don't know how easy is it to like repair a little bit. You know, you can't just patch a piece up if something happens.
That's probably the most inconsistent part across the whole industry is how much follow through do the different factories give. Some factories are amazing. I remember the first prefab building I ever did. The end wall came and it was the wrong pitch. So we had all the trusses up, and then we tilted up the end wall, and it was a different pitch. So it didn't match up with the slope of all the trusses. And we thought, oh my God. And it had the windows cut out, and it was, you know, eaves and the whole thing. It was just the wrong. So I called up the factory and said, we've got a huge problem here. We've got the wrong gable end, and it's the whole second floor and the gable end. And the guy said, yeah, don't worry about it. Just, we'll have another one. We'll have the right one there tomorrow. Wow. I said, are you kidding? And they said, no. I said, well, okay. And so the next day, a truck pulled up like 2 in the afternoon, offloaded the exact proper one. They'd made a mistake. Wow. And we said, oh, that's great. I said, do you want some help putting this other one back on the truck? And they said, no, just leave it. It's yours, whatever. They didn't even want it back, which I thought that was amazing back then, but now that no, they don't want it back. It's just trash.
But to how much they actually cost to make, right?
Yeah, but I've had things go wrong with prefab buildings where the people come over 3 states to fix, and then I've had different companies not even travel an hour to make good on something. And you know, you just learn. I mean, it's easier for me because I keep making buildings, so I'm sort of they know I'm always going to be shopping. So for each of you working individually, the trick is to affiliate with a builder who will keep making buildings, so that when you go to the factory, you can say, you know, if you don't give me a good product, then Bill here is not going to buy any more houses from you. And it's just part of the way you have to think when you're building a building. You know, if you're a repeat customer, you're going to get better service. If you're not a repeat customer, if you're a one-off customer, then you ought to affiliate with somebody who is a repeat customer. and this a little bit goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about, do I be my own general contractor, or do I hire a general contractor? Don't forget, when you hire a general contractor, it's not just somebody who's running the job while you're building the building. That's the person in his organization that'll come back and service your building. And it's also the person who can go to your suppliers and, whether it's a factory or the window, say, hey, this window is faulty, I need it replaced or fixed. If you're just a homeowner, Marvin's going to come out a lot less quickly than if you're a builder who buys so many windows every year.
Yeah.
It's just human nature. But it's a thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. I don't know if you covered windows in the last sessions, which I missed, but
God, we went into windows really deeply. You were here, but we went into so much detail and everything. Remember, everybody remember the windows? Annalie wasn't here, but how about that window presentation? Everybody got a free window. I remember we gave a free window to everybody.
Missed it. Oh man. So, but
I have you'll be getting a report on Windows. I'll share that with everybody.
Yeah,
So
because I mean, I like,
it talks about Windows and the type of windows you should be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I like architectural windows, oversized, tall, and all that stuff. And I imagine that they'll be very costly, and if anything happens, you can't just go to Home Depot and get another one. So that's going to be another area where figuring out the supplier and maintenance is going to be important, right?
Yeah, so though windows are sort of like heat pumps, they're getting better and better and more varied and more easily, you can get what you want more easily today than ever before. So yeah, I wouldn't be discouraged there.
But can you get German, are they suppliers, are they distributors of like German manufacturers or?
They are, but that was a pretty important question, say 8 years ago. Today, Anderson, Marvin, Pella, Geldwin all make triple pane windows, as do a whole raft of other American windows. Are they as good as the Germans? No, of course not. But it costs, I mean, you could buy one and replace it 3 times with the same amount of money as buying one German.
Yeah, and I was thinking, rather than the glass, I was thinking more around the frame itself, like, metal frames, for instance. You see that a lot in Europe. I haven't seen many here. Typically, they're wood or PVC.
You mean for the passive house?
Yeah.
Gio, do you know of a good window manufacturer in the North American continent for passive house? It used to be the Sirius Window was a great Sirius Windows and Door.
Yeah, Sirius is good.
They're out of business.
They're out of business. Yes. There's
Yeah,
an inline fiberglass window. They do a triple pane for passive house. They're out of Canada, here in Ontario. They're actually the only one that I know of house rated. But then again, you got to be careful because passive house US and passive house everywhere else is completely different, slightly different. So you'd have to look into that. But there's a company out of New York. It's called PVC Industries, and they make a triple pane window, which is actually being used by Vermont, and is actually quite a performer, according to the people I've been talking to. So there's that one there. There was one other one here in Canada, but I think they're out of the Western Canada, and I don't think that would help you out.
Right. Another place to ask that question, if I were doing the research, one of the first places I would go would probably be Bensonwood. I'd ask them what's their highest performance, because they, as a prefab manufacturer, they have a very nice balance between performance and aesthetics. And so they would probably know the best looking high performance window.
Okay. Thank you. at the
You
end
may
of all
also
this,
want to look at Lowen.
Lowen?
Yeah, Lowen.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll be exchanging a lot of emails in between, trying to get your thoughts on, based on all your experience, on how do you build houses economically, and if you want to do it as a business, make money out of it, because with all these things, building at $200-300 a square foot, I mean, you'd be spending $1 million building a house, and then
Yeah, they're expensive.
aside from the land, and that's what I'm constantly struck. That's one of the reasons that I haven't settled on what to do yet. Expand, renovate our existing house, knock down another property we have, or buy another one cheaper and build. But anytime you build from scratch, you're talking about, at least $600,000, and then and more.
Well, here's what I would say, Annalie. You're a young man, so you've got time.
Relatively speaking.
You've got time. And you're also early in your building career. So without even seeing those buildings or those sites, I would urge you to renovate something immediately. Something that has all the systems in it. Has bearing walls, has insulated walls, has windows, interior finishes, exterior finishes, has electrical and HVAC and plumbing, and ideally a little roofing. So it could be just a pop out or a bay window or an additional floor. And what happens when you do renovation, and most of us who are design builders start out doing renovation, you dig into a building and you find out the systems that are there, and you can think, why were they done? I mean, you could, by the time you finished building onto somebody else's building, you know that person. You know all the decisions they made. You know all the choices they made. It's one of the reasons renovating historic buildings is so compelling, is because you're really, in a way, talking to people 200 years ago. And so that's a good way to start. Start with renovation. And the other thing is, you don't want to knock down a building if there's any way you can affordably fix it up, because it's just a lost resource. Yeah. Whereas if you can take a building that exists but doesn't quite serve the purpose it needs to today, and you can add the next chapter to its story, that story becomes a way more valuable story than starting a new story.
Yeah.
And so I'd urge you to really look hard at the possibility of renovating. I realize renovating with mods is tough, but it's not undoable. I tend to think when you're going to renovate with mods, you put the mod close to the building and you link up to it. You don't try to make a zero clearance connection, because most old buildings are not as straight and true as what's coming out of a factory. Yeah. So
that's a good suggestion, and that's, I think I'd like to continue that dialogue, because I'm increasingly favoring that for our existing house. But the challenge, the big challenge I'm trying to solve for is we have water issues. We have a high water table. So how do we fix that on the lower level? And that's a really important aspect, to make sure it's watertight and mold free and all that. And second piece is, if you renovate, it's going to be almost, unless you're spending silly money to make it super efficient, because if you want to retrofit a house and make it net zero, it's going to be really expensive, because you either have to knock down all the interior walls and rebuild, or redo the siding and keep building out. So maybe it is an option, but those are the things I'm trying to, we'd have to compromise, obviously, but one part of the house we want to expand, maybe that would be the area where we can just do my dream kind of suppliers and do a little extension, and then do a connection in between. That way it'll get my feet wet and be able to,
I think so. I mean, I think that's bring that project in next time. Let's have at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. Okay.
Perfect.
So I think we're down to the final. Are there any questions that those of us who go on and on have drowned out? Okay. Gio, do you want to set us up for next week?
Yeah, next week we've got a presenter. His name is Peter Schneider. He's part of Vermont, and he'll be giving us a presentation on Vermont and what they're doing, and give you a little more perspective into the modular system. So, and I'll also be sending out the next reading latest tomorrow night, and some other reading material for you. What else? Am I forgetting anything? No, that's good. That's it. That's perfect. Everybody needs to do more work on their model.
And Peter Snyder is such a special guest that if you have any friends who have an interest in high energy performance, this is a guy who ran Efficiency Vermont for the state, and he's done just wonderful work in high efficiency buildings in every sort of, every scale and all sorts of things. And so if you have any friends that are interested in that sort of stuff, encourage them to come. He's a special speaker. We're lucky to have him. So thanks to Gio. All right.
All right.
That's it.
So we'll see everybody next week. How's that?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good work.
Bye.
See you next week.
Gio, you're in charge.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah. I'm heading out tomorrow.
Gio, are you there? You still
heading
there?
out tomorrow. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you were a
I'm
little
heading out
bit.
tomorrow.
Your transmission was a little bit better this week, but there were still some freeze frames that were hysterical.
I guess I got a face for that, don't I?
No, you can't control it, but imagine this. You're talking. First, there's two things that make it incredibly entertaining. One is that when you talk, and you've done this your whole life, when you're talking and you're thinking at the same time, you close your eyes like this. So if you buy something, and so if the frame freezes that way, you get Gio say, well, if you're going to use that kind of a product, then you go, you had one today that was like this.
I fell asleep.
It was so good. I thought we'd lost you too. It was a long one.
Oh, Lord.
That's not your new computer, is it?
No, it's not. I'm actually at my parents' place, so I'm using the Wi-Fi here, which probably is a little better because maybe it's Toronto, I guess. I don't know.
It is better, yeah.
But I'm leaving tomorrow morning, and I'll be heading down. Yeah. That's pretty much it.
So it occurred to me that
have you heard from
some way to bring my truck up so you could have a truck? I mean, I have the truck down here. I don't need it.
Well, I'm driving with my Jeep.
Oh, that's right. Of course. Yeah.
I'm driving down. But thanks for that. Maybe we should somehow bring it up there. If you don't need it down there, we should bring it up there.
Yeah.
I'm bringing a bunch of stuff that's yours. I've got your drawings that you gave to Sellers.
Really? They've been up to Canada and back?
Well, I was going to leave them at the Grimaldi's, right? And I love them. They're the best. But the thing is, they're thinking about redoing the great room, and they said they haven't started, so I'll either be sleeping there for a while until the contractor starts. And I didn't want to leave stuff there because it kind of it's not their fault, but it kind of gets lost. And so I figured, you know what? They're coming to Canada with me, and I'm going to bring them back. And I know we're going to meet up. So I figured I'll give you all that stuff. So I've got all that stuff, and yeah. Yeah.
So you're going to be there tomorrow night.
I'm going to be there, yeah, for sure, tomorrow night.
Wow.
Yeah,
All
I'll be
right.
there before tomorrow night, but I'll be there. I mean, I'm leaving in the morning. I'm going to try and leave around 4 or 5, probably,
Cool.
and just make my way slowly and try to get there early enough.
I think you have good weather for driving.
Yeah, tomorrow's supposed to be nice. Tomorrow's supposed to be
Yeah.
nice. The weekend's supposed to get interesting, but tomorrow's supposed to be nice. And Monday, I've got a meeting with Vermont, and I'm going to sit down with their, I guess, the girl they hired to do all the drawing and stuff. So we'll go through the model with them, and I'll leave them a copy of the model. And
Do you know, speaking of the model, do you know if 18 can save to as far back as 15?
18.4, I think, is the latest one that he.
Yeah, but can it save a file so that it
To
can
17?
be read by version 14?
Oh, version 14. I think I saw as far back as 14. I think you're right. Yeah. At least on my version, I can.
Yeah. You saw the email with regard to PBS?
Yeah, I got all that. You copied me on that, and I saw that. I haven't heard from George, so I'll give him a call when I'm down there. I'll just, touch base with him and say, hey, what do you, have you taken a look at it? What you think, so on and so forth.
Right.
And I'm hoping to have a good set of. What I'd like to do is next week finish what I got. This way, I can hand it to you. You can take a look at it. You redline it as much as you want. Because I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of stuff. But as I'm going through it, I'm beginning to. I guess we gotta, like I was saying, I guess we want to make sure we give them enough details so that if we hand it off to a builder, because Vermont's not going to do the whole thing, either way, they're going to get somebody to do it. So they got to know what they're doing, and
right,
or at least what we're asking for. So I'm trying to put all those in there, and yeah. So that's. And I am bringing my new computer with me. I'm hoping to download Revit while I'm down there, and do a little work with that. And I don't know about the class that I'm supposed to teach about practical geometry. I haven't heard if they got students or not, so I'll find out about that.
Oh God, I hope they did. I think that's such a cool class.
I set it up and I started doing some work on it, and then we got busy with the hoopers, and I'm gonna have to take some time and just go over by the syllabus and prepare a little more.
I know that Genevieve has been, the curriculum committee has been meeting with her. The curriculum committee being me and Mac and Genevieve, and sometimes Bill Reed, and we've been trying to move the curriculum towards something better. And what I've discovered is they don't have a deadline for putting out the next catalog.
No, they don't.
So it's like we're back in early days, which I'm not so upset about. But the reason I bring it up is because what I'm starting to realize is that, courses, even old classic courses like Deadening's courses and Paul Hankey's courses, they aren't getting much marketing. So of course, classical geometry, sacred geometry, you really need to. We should do a little brainstorming on figuring out how to get the word out on that course. And I'll do some thinking on it. The people that would, I think that would be. It's kind of a university level course. Like if we could get a little brochure out and just blitz a whole bunch of the New England colleges, I bet we'd fill it right up.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
I think I can do that. Okay, sure. I'll work on that. Also, I was also
Leonardo da Vinci is very famous right now. The new book came out, so that's got to help. The Vitruvian Man, come on.
That's got to help.
Yeah.
Right. I was also thinking, this could also be a good course over, because the thing is, you spend a lot of time showing stuff. You talk. Yeah, I'm thinking it'd be a good course online as well as in person. Because you need the time to actually do it, and then any questions you have can be done like this, like I do with the class. Right. And the thing is that it actually lends itself back. I think it lends itself better to that, because usually what ends up happening is, you're showing them a construction and everybody copies it, and you go through it step by step.
Except for the thing is, what makes it so amazing, I think you could do some of it online and you could do the constructions, but to then go out in the field and actually see that geometry is not a classroom thing, it's a reality thing. It's out there. Yeah, that's the payoff, man. Everybody's had geometry courses and they either liked them or didn't, and they'd like to do more. But when you pull an arc and notice that the crossing points or the radius and all that, that just is magic. That's just so great.
Yeah.
I want that course to run.
The thing is that one of the exercises I have might be, I was just looking at it to see how practical it is, but I mean, it's not that bad, because I mean, as long as you, the idea is like taking a door, like for example, this was actually a test back when, I guess, maybe when Bob was in school, where they gave you a model of let's say a federal style house. And then they'd say, okay, your test is to actually construct a dormer to scale and make sure it fits in the hole that's in the roof.
Wow. Oh, at like quarter scale.
Yeah.
Wow.
A quarter scale model. And then your job was to actually, basically design and build and cut up all the pieces and put them together so that when you fit it, it actually fit on there. And so I've actually got something similar and actually more fun. It's a eyebrow dormer.
Oh, cool.
So,
but it has to be, but it's you do it in 3D. I mean, you do the real thing.
Oh no, you do the real thing.
Yeah.
What I would do is I would make just it's just like a prism, triangular prism, and then I'd say, okay, here's a roof. We're going to put an eyebrow dormer on here. This is the scale. Okay, and what we'll do before we go do that, I'll give go through how to construct an ellipse, how to construct different methods of how to construct an ellipse, and then talk to them about, okay, this is how it's actually built in the field. Show them that, and then after having gone through all that, say, okay, now here's the model, construct to scale that goes on to you, and it's not. I mean, unless you really don't understand. I'll be there to help them out. But I mean, it's not that difficult to do, because I mean, I did it for Brian's house twice.
Yeah.
There was a regular, there was a small, like a big eyebrow dormer, and then on the other side was an elliptical dormer. Okay.
Cool.
And I used, and they were both figured out using two different methods. So I mean, it's easily done. It's easily done.
Sounds great.
So that was one. That's one of the exercises for the thing, and So I mean, right. So okay, yeah. I'll see what I'll see if I can put together a quick brochure. I think I had some stuff put together before, because I know Chris had asked me to put together some pictures for. They wanted to put some pictures up with the.
It could be even a single. It could be a single 8.5 by 11. It could be just a little. Something to their interest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, give me a call when you get close to Vermont.
Yeah, I'll give you a call. Sure. No problem.
I'll miss you both.
Are you? When are you heading out to Australia?
March.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, not till March. If that happens.
Right.
It's the usual thing. I'm saying, why don't we do this? I got enough miles. No, that's a lot of work. Nah, we don't want to do that. Nah. God, it's tough making people have a good time. Actually, though, I think Tristan is starting to realize, wait a minute, this would be really, really cool. I said it wouldn't be like we would go and just sit in Flip's house. He said, yeah, I hate that sitting around with grown-ups. So we wouldn't. We would go out and see stuff. Probably see scorpions and snakes and get bitten and killed. It'd be perfect.
You know that Australia has the most poisonous spiders.
It has the most poisonous, toxic things spiders, fish, jellyfish, poison ivy, poison sumac, poison clovers, poison air, everything. It's the most poisonous place that I couldn't believe my brother was moving there. He's so freaked out by that shit. Like a red ant, a fire ant drives him just around the bend. So there he is. No, I mean, yeah. It's they have lionfish like other places have goldfish. They're just, lionfish. It's the most toxic.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So we'll see how it works. We'll see. All right, my man. I'm gonna talk to you tomorrow because I am beat.
Yeah.
But that was a good class.
Yes, it was.
I think those are good students. And Ron's a good student. He just wasn't there. And what